Good morning, everybody. It's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? No. This is 5 reasons to believe in an Open DXP. Okay.
I'm Leen. Good morning. Chief Marketing at Dropsolid. So I'm using an Open DXP, and I'm also helping marketers at our clients to move their Drupal CMS into a digital experience platform. And while there's only one letter of difference in the job title of myself and Nick, there is a big difference in the context and the background and the priorities and the way we look at what is important and why is a digital experience platform so important and why we really believe in it. And that's what our session today is about, to give you the two views of the marketer and the technical view on an open digital experience platform.
Yeah. And my name is Nick. I'm indeed the CTO of Dropsolid. I've been active in the Drupal community for over 15 years. I started as a website builder, and only recently I tried to get a deep understanding of certain, as we call it, marketing words, or sort of like as a developer role as I have, you try to demystify certain buzzwords because you kind of go a little crazy if you don't fully understand what it really entails. So that's also my role in Dropsolid, is to try to understand, okay, where's the market going? How can we solve that with open technology? What is this DXP buzzword really about? And ultimately also in this session to give you a bit of a practical overview on what does that mean for you if you would be a technical person. But more about that later. Just maybe another context. So I've been building personalization softwares at Acquia in the past. Now also I'm active in the marketing automation open source Martech community. So you'll see those three worlds and Drupal are colliding now to form a bigger whole. Okay. So in the poll, next to the chat, so there's some tabs: chat, polls, people, Q&A. There's a poll with a question: who do you identify with most? I'd like you to go there and click on one of those roles that you identify most with. If you don't see yourself fit in the first three, please click on other and type in the chat who you identify with. So we can see already some votes coming in, and most of you are developer. For people just coming into the session, feel free to also fill in the poll at your own pace. Okay, but it's good that we see a representation of each role, and apparently so far nobody identifies with other, but let us know in the chat if so. All right, so let's continue.
So before we dive into our reasons to believe in an Open DXP, I think it first requires a bit of explanation on what is a DXP really. So my view at it is that consumer expectations on digital experiences are really set by the Amazons and the Googles and the Netflixes. People expect a frictionless and personal treatment from any company or brand they engage with. And while marketing teams are already used for many years to generate leads and generate awareness, and websites used to be really serving this purpose, this has changed. The digital customer experience is becoming more and more important, and it's covering the whole customer journey and not just the lead generation stage. So that requires a different approach for marketing teams, and it involves more stakeholders and more tools. So to me, a digital experience platform really is an ecosystem of different tools allowing marketing teams to get insights in their visitors and customers and to deliver, based on those insights, data-driven, relevant customer experiences across all their digital channels.
And to make it a bit more practical, let's give you an example on a customer journey, as we call it in these terms, what that could mean for an end user. Then we'll dig in a bit on the architecture behind it. But in this case, you see a journey of someone coming in through Google. And Google is an inbound channel in a similar way that Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn is an inbound channel. Oftentimes, It could be a campaign, and you come in with these UTM parameters that you then have to filter technically. But perfect, it goes into Google Analytics. It's inbound. The person gets into your website because obviously you have the perfect website, 100% SEO scores. We're assuming that. When this person browses on the website, it actually browses around and there's a behavior happening. Drupal itself doesn't really understand any of that behavior unless you actually click on something. Now, what is happening here is that there's a customer data platform added to it. And you can see in the top, in the bottom left, that this behavior is also reflected in one of these three personas. So this person actually has a certain behavior, goes to workshops, tries to get information, and the person is identified as the segment explorer. In this case, it's happening with assisted AI, but it could also be manual based on campaigns or other parameters like location. Okay, this is an anonymous story. Now, in this case, we go to the conversion step. The person leaves her email address, and now this person has a name and a segment, or classified as a certain persona. So, which is great because now we have a full overview, a 360 view. That's the term that is being used. A 360 view of this person, including what this person downloaded, how she converted, what segment she is, and what pages that she visited. It could even go further and integrate with CRMs like Microsoft Dynamics or SAP tools or any of those things to get more information in that single profile. Now, if the person comes back, what you see here is that the form on the top wasn't there before. Actually, the website knows this is this persona or this segment, and we're changing the front page to be more reflective of the needs of the end user, which is called personalization. Because we think that this person, if she has an interest in exploring, she's more likely to sign up for a workshop compared to buying a flower piece. And it's not over yet. So now we personalize the website. We can also personalize newsletters. As you can see here, this person received an email. And the first thing at the top is workshops. It's not buying things. The buying things actually goes in the bottom, perhaps. But you can actually adopt and change the newsletter according to that same persona. This entire customer building or customer journey, that's what a DXP is able to build for you, or that you're building with those tool sets that are connected together. So hopefully that's a bit more practical to give you some insight in what this is. Now, if we continue and go to the next slide, you might wonder, and I saw in the poll that there's quite many of you that identify as a developer. So you're asking, yes, but how does it actually work? What's the architecture? What you see here is what is a DXP really. And if you look at the left of this slide, you can see that everything started from a CMS. And like Drupal also 20 years ago started as a CMS, a content management system. But ultimately, we wanted to maybe have multiple brands for a single company. So Drupal had to become more powerful to power these multiple brands. And then suddenly, now we have customer profiles over these multiple brands. Then we talk about a DXP because you're starting to gather all that data as well. Now, that's one interpretation. As you can see in these other slides, there's many other representations. There's a commerce DXP, which is really tailored to actually an online shop. There's a portal DXP, which is more tailored to someone logging in and really having interaction with you on a one-on-one basis. And then there's a content DXP, and that's actually the one that we're focusing on today because Drupal is really strong in that content DXP space. On the other hand, there's also a lot of proprietary DXPs. As we know, there is Sitecore, there's Adobe, and even Acquia has the content piece open because that's why we're here for with Drupal. But there's many other components that are added, which are proprietary. So then the question is, okay, but how do I make this a reality? And why would I choose for an Open DXP? And let's see what the challenges are if we do so. And why would we choose a DXP for a customer? If you have any questions so far, feel free to put them in the chat. The chat is actually the better place for us to see because we can only see the chat right now. If you put it in Q&A, that's more for the end of the session. Well, Surabi, yes, but I cannot see the Q&A tab here, so apologies for the misinformation. Yeah, so please do it in the chat. It's easier for us. Now,
the first challenge. Find your way in the Martech landscape. I don't know how many of you have seen this before. It's the marketing technology landscape. And each year, Chief Martech creates a new version of this landscape. They started out with a few hundreds of them like 10 years ago. At this point, there are more than 8,000 solutions in the Martech landscape. So even if you don't know it, it's not really important, but you can't ignore the amount of new tools popping up and entering the market. But as you have a small marketing team, there is a limit to the number of tools that your team can handle. Not only do you need to buy them and maintain them, you need to train your team to work with them. You need to integrate it with the other tools you're using. You need to keep up with the new innovations and have so many different logins. So probably you have created some sort of ecosystem using a number of different tools, but the question is, are you really happy with it? Are you making the most of it? And most of all, do you know what your visitors are doing across those different tools and channels that you're managing? And this is something where an open digital experience platform can bring a solution in terms of it might replace some of those tools that you are using and make you use the integrated DXP solution, but it doesn't have to. You can also integrate the different tools that you really love to use into the DXP, where the main goal is that you integrate all the data from your visitors on a unified visitor profile across the different channels, and you get those insights out of it. I think that's the most important thing that an open DXP could add to your marketing ecosystem of tools that you already have.
Yeah, and maybe to make it a bit practical and ask you a question, in your company that you're working, or maybe it's your company, how many SaaS tools are you using in order to fulfill your marketing needs today? Which I'm talking about, MailChimp is one, Zapier is another one, HubSpot could be one, maybe Martech is one, but there's like many others, like smaller tools. So please fill in a number in the chat, 3, 5, 10, something, so we can get an idea on how big your footprint is in terms of amount of tools that you're using today. If you don't have a clue, you can take a guess. So hopefully I can get some answers in the chat in a bit. And to elaborate on that, most companies for sure have 5 or 6 or 7 of these tools. Just take an example of MailChimp and Drupal itself. Now, it's great that you do emails with MailChimp, but the customer data, as in like who is interacting with your website, is not reflected in MailChimp. You send emails with MailChimp, people receive emails, they click on your website, but the website doesn't change based on the context of that person coming in. Maybe you're sending newsletter, we have a new product, you go to a landing page of that new product because the email was sent, there's a new product. You know that person is interested in that new product, but then, the website kind of goes into a black hole and not interacting with that context. There's many of these tools that are really good in specific needs, but it's really hard to tie them all together. Now, it's possible to tie them all together, and most will have an API. MailChimp has an API, Drupal has APIs, like other smaller tools also will have APIs. And then you say, okay, I will find someone internally in our company to click all these things together, maybe make a middleware in Symfony and whatnot. But then you're actually creating technical debt. Someone has to maintain those connections between all these different tools, and it's a risk for your business. So it's a challenge, trying to make sure that you're 5 years ahead in time, that you're still sustainable in terms of the tool sets that you're using and that everything is still interconnected. Because also remember, you don't have any say in the roadmap of these products. That's a challenge to have. So just not finding all these tools is a challenge, but also connecting all of them is a challenge. we'll talk about that in a bit later. And from what I see in the chat, nobody has any tools. So yeah. Yeah, so Spotler is indeed probably one of these tools. Tree, that's good. That's a low footprint. We've seen in our customer base a lot bigger footprints where it becomes a chaos. Yeah. Okay, so
here comes the next challenge. Do you know who your customer really is? Your customer or your visitor or your member, if you are in an organizational context. So continuing on the previous challenge, using many different tools means you're capturing a lot of data, but it's disparate, it's not connected, and often it doesn't bring you much value in terms of making it actionable. So for example, when I arrived at Dropsolid, we were using MailChimp to send out newsletters and different kinds of emails. We had Drupal, obviously, and we had the chatbot also on our Drupal website. 3 different tools, completely disparate data, where in MailChimp I could see who responded to my emails and how much engagement I had there. In Google Analytics, I had the insight on the website performance, really, and some limited behavioral information. But it's never really linked to actual visitors. So wouldn't it be cool if you can bring all this data together to get valuable insights on your visitors across the different tools, and on top of that insight, make really data-driven decisions and take actions. So a DXP helps you do exactly that. And that's also what we did at Dropsolid. We replaced MailChimp with Martech, marketing automation, which is nicely integrated with Drupal, and we kept the chatbot. And today, I know when a visitor is coming to my website, whether or not I already have them in my email system, so that my chatbot should no longer waste valuable time on site of the visitors I already have in my mailing list to try and get their email address. I can use chatbots or website personalization to serve them with more valuable content over bothering them with leaving their email address because I already have it.
Yeah, and it doesn't stop there. I think all of you are in the website business, and oftentimes you do great analysis in advance to find out the persona. So there is John, which is 30 years old, and you classify him as a dad with 2 kids and interested in whatever it could be. And there's like many of these personas that you do in a pre-phase before a website is actually launched. When the website goes live, oftentimes nothing happens with those personas after the website is actually launched. Wouldn't it be nice if you could find out if someone correlates with these personas? So that you don't have to throw away all that research that you did in advance and then let the website just be as is. So I really try and hope that we could extend the life cycle of that information, of these personas that you try to reach, also into an actual practice, trying to understand the data points on your website, trying to understand if someone correlates with these personas, and not only using that in the website, also use that in your email marketing, maybe also use that in the chatbot. So that goes a lot further than just trying to understand, okay, what's happening on my site. It's trying to get deep understanding of who is on my site and what are they looking for. And you don't need a data scientist to just figure that out. There is open solutions on the market to do so. Okay, owning and renting. Maybe a nice example here. Could also be okay if you mention it in the chat. There's a big difference in owning a house or renting a house. When you own a house, you're completely free to renovate the house and to change the house in the way that you want. Owning a house is very similar as actually creating a Drupal site where you own the code, the data, and the evolution of that specific piece of software. Renting a house is a very different thing. Renting a house, you have to ask even if you can paint the walls. You have to ask if you can drill a hole. It really depends on the rules of the rental or the lease in like what you can do with that property. Very much the same is actually happening with SaaS tools, with tools that you just buy on a subscription basis be very careful there, because it really makes a big difference in terms of risk and data compliance. It's okay to put all your customer data in MailChimp. It's okay to put all your customer data in Drift, but just make sure that if you use 8 or 10 or even more tools where all this customer data goes into, that you understand what risk you're bringing your business in. If one of these tools has a security breach, you are liable for that breach towards your customer. These privacy and security rules are becoming a lot more important these days. And it also is not just about data and risk management. It's about also the entire third-party cookie thing on the web. And to give you some more insight on that, it was, I think, this year that Google and Safari and Firefox were about to no longer allow third-party cookies. What does that mean in practice? Facebook and LinkedIn and other really big tech companies can no longer track you across these different sites. Now, you probably use this today to do targeted advertisements in Facebook and LinkedIn. So you actually are okay with having them have your data, you kind of give your data away to those companies, but that's going to stop next year. Is your business in a risk today if that capability is stopped next year? Are you still okay in doing digital advertisements on these platforms? Do you know how to do that? Do you have that data? So try to think about the risk that you're in not having your own data set of your customers. So it's an owning and a renting thing. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, not much really. I think you said the most important things. And I also think that GDPR and all these data compliancy regulations are not the most favorite topic among marketeers, but we can't ignore it. It's really important.
Yeah.
Also when you decide to go for one tool or the other, it's a really important consideration to make about where your data is and how much ownership you have there.
Yeah, and which risk you're facing. Okay.
Yeah. So the next challenge is, again, following up on that just a little bit. So it's about getting really intimate with your customers. So first, you have all these data. Hopefully, you can make the step to getting valuable insights on your data. But then the most important step is the fact that you can make actions based on those insights, and that you can make indeed your digital experiences really relevant and personal based on those insights that you have on each visitor. Now, what sets an Open DXP apart from other personalization tools, of which there is many others out there? And that's actually a combination of the 3 earlier challenges that we had. It limits the number of third-party tools that you have, because you do the personalization directly into Drupal. You don't need another interface or another tool to build your personalized content. You do it where you manage all your website contents. It's right into Drupal. That's the first big difference compared to standalone personalization tools. And another big difference is the fact that you have all the data together. You're not limited to a specific set of behavioral data captured on your website. No, you can bring all the data in that you have collected on your customer profiles. The email interaction data, even CRM data can be integrated. And based on all those insights together, you can build your segments that you want to use for personalization. So that's, again, a big difference compared to standalone personalization tools.
Yeah. To also make that very practical, you might have heard of the tool Optimizely, or maybe even Google A/B testing and all those things, or Acquia Lift. What they do is they replace, using JavaScript, the content on your website. Because it's a standalone tool, it adds on top of your existing website. And suddenly for your content marketeer, it becomes a lot more complex because you're managing 2 tools for the same experience as the same page. Now, what an Open DXP offers, and what the solutions that Dropsolid provides also offer, is that it integrates really deeply. Yeah? So Drupal integrates really deeply with Apache Unomi, and it allows you to say this block can be shown for people in Belgium, that block can be shown for people in the Netherlands. And then you might wonder as a technical person, because many of you identify as technical, yes, but how does that work with caching? I don't believe you. It probably still does JavaScript injection, all those things. It's totally open. So the Drupal module that's out there that connects with Apache Unomi is fully compliant with the whole varnish stack, with the entire best practices of Drupal itself. And the content marketeer can just in paragraphs or in Layout Builder change the content and say this content is for that persona, that content is for that persona, this block or that block. So in that way, getting intimate with your customer, yes, but it also needs to work on a technical level. Your content marketeer needs to be able to see who's on your website, and we tackled that with just capturing all that data and make sure it goes into a customer data platform, and then also activating that by allowing personalization, but in a bit of the easy way. It's in an integrated way. The content stuff is still in Drupal, but it integrates with these tools. It sends it to the marketing automation, it sends it to the customer data platform, and that glue is actually already written, and it's not your responsibility to tie all these tools together. So that's the key difference between different tools that you yourself put together. Here, it's an integrated solution, even though the different tools are open on their own. Okay.
That brings us to the last challenge, at least the last one that we've prepared for you. And then I'm really curious to see if you have still other challenges. Our last challenge is the evolution or revolution from code to config. To me, the girl on this slide is a marketeer. This is more and more what we do as marketeers. More and more technical people are engaged in marketing teams without becoming true developers. The role as marketeers becomes more and more technical. You need to understand data very well. You need to be able to cope with creating dashboards and getting insight out of this data. And also mastering these huge amount of semi-technical tools. So today's expectations of marketing teams are not only different in terms of managing a bigger part of the customer journey and more the customer experience, it also evolves into a more technical role. And luckily, all these tools that we have are also becoming more and more configuration tools. So it allows also semi-technical marketeers to configure things together without them needing to write code. So that's a really interesting evolution for marketing teams. And what an Open DXP means in this context, it's an opportunity to work with integration hubs where you can really configure in a graphical user interface the integration between different kinds of tools. And for example, it also allows you to connect Google Data Studio to your customer data platform so that you can build those valuable segments based on all your customer data. You can use them in your website to do personalization, but you can also leverage those segments in Google Analytics or in Google Data Studio so that you have really the insights on, does this work, this personalization campaign? Does this segment really show a higher engagement compared to this segment before or compared to the other segments? The fact that you get those insights out of these different tools and that you can do that without custom coding is really, I think, a very nice and interesting evolution from code to config and from more independence to a certain level to marketing teams from developers.
Yeah, and it's what we see in the market as well. I mean, to also ask you a question, have you ever used Zapier, or do you know what Zapier is capable of doing? Feel free to put that in the chat. We see that tools like Zapier, like integration hubs, really gain a lot of traction. What used to be a responsibility of the developer or a team of developers to write these integrations between these different tools now actually goes into a user interface like Zapier. Zapier is able to connect, quote unquote, everything to everything. The tricky part about Zapier is that it's proprietary. It means that every data that you send in there actually is also a risk to your business. Now, the marketeer, as Lynn mentioned, is getting more and more technical. So this person also wants to be a lot more quicker in, okay, there's a new tool and I want to connect it to our user data, but the development team doesn't have time, so it's going to take 2 months. If you're a business person, that means you're actually in risk because another business could catch up with you faster and you're not the first on the market with that connection. So it's a risk. Oftentimes, it's about time to market. That's why these integration hubs, so from code to config, are really important because it allows you to test out these different user journeys and scenarios, connecting a new tool that's suddenly on the market, maybe AI chatbot, whatever, to your existing platform. Today, people use Zapier. What we propose here is also an open solution where you own the data, but it's still possible to make these configurations in a WYSIWYG or in like a user interface. And for that, on a practical level, we recommend to use N8N, which is called an integration hub similar to Zapier. Look it up on GitHub. It's a great tool to do exactly this. It's a revolution from code to config. It's also why Drupal became big. Drupal suddenly allowed content management for the content marketeer. Before that, it was the responsibility of the developer to change and write the pages. This is not a new concept. It just goes to a higher level of these user journeys. So that's our challenge that we see and the revolution or evolution that we also see.
So as a conclusion, from my view, let's be clear, I'm a really strong believer of personalized customer experiences and also Open DXP. I think it's a really valuable framework to build future-proof, long-term, sustainable solution without, and where you have really the insight on your customer, on your visitors across the different channels. But another important conclusion that I make is that tooling is really important, and managing your data according to the regulations is also really important, but the team behind it, the team controlling these tools and really creating the concepts and the campaigns and making the right decisions based on those insights, that's even more key than having just the tools.
And it's also normal. So if you go into a store or like indeed here with the cocktails that you see, the person that's serving you could make you a suggestion and you think it's normal because you're in a bar and you expect that from that person that is actually delivering you the drink. It's the same in a store with clothings. It could be that this person is helping you with suggestions on what to buy and what to wear. But you could also say, no, thank you, I will choose on my own. The same trend is happening on websites, and an Open DXP or DXP in general is able to cater to that need. You have the choice to be helped, as in personalized. You also have the choice to say, no, thank you, I don't accept any cookies. I will do the neutral version. I will decide on my own. That's exactly the same shift that is happening on the web. So hopefully that helps you with understanding why would you choose for a DXP? Why would you choose for an Open DXP? Is to get that ownership of the data, get actually control over your interactions, and be free to create customer journeys, including these integration hubs, by being still free to adopt SaaS tools or other tools to add to that mix, to add to this cocktail, to create the best digital version of your business online.
And to close it off with just making it a bit more practical. So we have talked today about an Open DXP. For us, that contains 3 big components. It's managing your content. It's managing in the content management system. It's managing your customer data across the different channels in a customer data platform. And it's doing marketing automation, so extending the website channel by sending emails and SMS messages and other digital channels as outbound messages on top of your inbound website.
Yeah, and it could be augmented with CRMs and with other business intelligence that you might already have at your client or in your business.
Absolutely. And one more slide, and this is really the last one that we have prepared for you today. So the underlying technologies that we are using for those 3 different components that are in the platform, it's 3 open source technologies: Drupal for content management, Martech for marketing automation, and Unomi as the engine for our customer data platform.
And with that, we'd like to open up the stage for you to maybe ask a question. Right now, we do have the ability to look at the Q&A tab, so feel free to put your questions there. Otherwise, in chat is also fine. So I'll give you a couple seconds to write down your question if you have them. Okay. Well, if you don't have any question right now, that's also totally okay. You can find us at dropsolid.com if you would have more questions, or if you'd like to explore a conversation on how would that work for me or for my customer. We also have a booth here at DrupalCon, so happy to give you help there. But I did see there's a question that came in, and I'll leave that question to Lynn.
Can you provide some insight, Wim is asking, into a case where you had issues convincing a client to convert to DXP? I think, indeed, it's still challenging. I think the most challenging thing for us when we talk to clients is explaining what a DXP really is.
Yeah, so, it's the same as this session. It's hard. It's a concept. It's not a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so issues convincing, I think explaining is the first thing, that they really understand the added value on top of what they are used to in just using a content management system. And on top of that, a challenge that we also hear and that we can oppose to a certain extent, sometimes it seems also like it's huge. It's so far away from where we are today that it sometimes maybe scares them away, although it's easy also using these modules to make it step by step and to take small steps of improvement, like first start with personalization in your Drupal and forget about the marketing automation part, or the other way around. So it allows customers to take small steps in increasing their digital experiences. So I think that is the 2 biggest challenges at this point that we see. It's still a bit unknown, and it scares them when you talk about the end goal, while they can take small steps towards it.
Yeah, and I think also practically what we've seen is that all customers want the end goal, but they have a really long way to go. As a big example, if you use a CMS and MailChimp, okay, that's a good start, but it's not connected. So then you have to think about, okay, what would it mean if I no longer send a monthly newsletter, but I send emails or newsletters based on the interaction that I have on my website? That's a really big first step. So like, you're not even capturing any of that data. And I also saw a question, marketing automation and tracking. You don't need to per se track information on your website if you already know who filled in which form and what is the interest of that person, and then create an entire journey, as in newsletters maybe every 2 weeks, specifically for people with that interest, because they gave you that information. That's a massive step towards already a DXP. And yes, you already have a DXP if you do this. That doesn't mean that you can then add the tracking part. To go to in Theodore's question, you could add the tracking part afterwards, but it's an optional step. People are able to say no. That doesn't mean that they cannot fill in the form anymore, and that you cannot provide a personalized customer journey or a personalized email journey if they give that information on a consensual basis without tracking. So hopefully that answers both questions in a bit. But it's not a thing from day 1 to day 2 and you have a DXP. It's probably a journey of a year, maybe even longer. So, okay. Now, there's another question from Rachel. She wonders if we should use these type of features on Drupal.org. I think so. I think we should try to understand what the persona is on Drupal.org. You are an evaluator, which is a very different thing than a person that is already hardcore into Drupal and actually directly wants to go to the modules pages. If I just look at myself, I'm very much lost if I go to Drupal.org and I try to find the technical stuff. Because it's in a menu somewhere below, I would say, you know who I am, make it easy and just throw all that other stuff away. But that's indeed personalizing. So I think there's a case on Drupal.org for these different personas to make it easier and make a guess on how that is. And it shouldn't be too disruptive, but you can make it a bit easier. So that's certainly possible. The other option that you say, Rachel, yes, very much so. Highlight contribution opportunities. Some people are more likely in event organizing. Some people are more likely in marketing technology, other in really core stuff. You could also really do something there. So that's possible. Make Drupal.org a DXP platform. So hopefully that helps. Maybe the last one. From Theodore, what's our opinion on exposing all tracked data to the users, like Twitter does with the list of interests? I'm fully in favor. And I'll let Lane give her opinion about that next. But Unomi, that's why I got it like in love with Unomi. Everything you send to Unomi, the response is the full profile. So if you go to the website of Dropsolid, go to the network tab, you will see that if you accept the cookies, you will be captured and your data is captured to Unomi. The response that you have is the full list of properties that we know about you, anonymous or not. So what I would like to add to that module is a page that says, this is what we know about you. And then even would be better is that it could be granularly removed. As you say, I don't want you to know that about me anymore. So I would love to add that, and I think that's where the world should evolve towards. Transparency in the customer data about you is the way forward. If you look into AI, it's the same shift. Today, an AI model is generated, but the AI model cannot explain you why it chooses a certain thing for you. The shift is happening where you can ask the AI model, explain me why you chose that path for me. So I think you'll see a lot of things happening on that shift as well. I don't know if you have anything to say about that.
Oh, I totally agree.
Yeah, so I'm very much a strong
so
believer
does
there.
Theodore
Yeah.
and two other people. So
yeah. And that's also what you are able to do with an Open DXP. You're in control. Those principles that you stand for, you can actually do that yourself. You're not liable for a roadmap of another one or another customer platform that might not follow that same ethical values as you have. So thank you for your attention. Our time is up. I hope you find it interesting or found it interesting. And as said, you can reach us at the booth or at dropsolid.com if you'd like to know more about what we do or how we do this, or maybe even how you can do this yourself without any product of Dropsolid themselves. So, okay. Have a great rest of your DrupalCon.
Yeah, thank you very much. Enjoy your day.
Yeah.
And hope to talk soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.